How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Well, welcome to another episode of Headcases, and I have to say this as I'm particularly excited today about today's guest because besides being a UK resident and an amazing hairdresser, the passions that he has include as well as hair, art, music, and fashion. And I have to say this does include him and guarantees him as his work getting always in place for TV and in industry magazines. Recently, Creative Head magazine presented him with the Business Thinker Award for building an outstanding business. And I have to say, when you hear him talk about the brands that he has and how he's diversified, you'll agree as well. And inside that, the judges of that award, they dubbed Mark, little hint as well who this might be, as he dubbed him as a genius and an inspiration because of his multi-platform brand that he's created. And that has spanned salons, studios, academies, even boasting a farm from which the ingredients that he uses are the source for his products. He is the founder and creative director of the Electric brand, including Electric Salons, the Electric Studio, Electric Education Academy, and ultimately the Electric product range. So let's get into this week's head case, Mr. Mark Woolley. Mr. Mark Woolley, it is a pleasure and an honor. I mean, it's been whatever, I think 2-3 months since we saw each other in LA when you did the launch of your Legends art piece. And I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done, but it's great to have you on here. I'm super excited to talk and get to know you better.
Thank you for having me on, Chris. I a big fan of what you do. And I really appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, listen, Mark, first off, I want to talk more about this in just a bit. But I do want to get into Legends and where that came from and how that all came apart. But just while we're on that topic, that was such a nice event that I think you and Marlene RC put together. And if you're the listener and you're wondering what we're talking about, there was a little LA where you did a launch, or one of the launches that you did of the American version of your Legends group, and you had a whole bunch of people that just were there having a great time. And if you've ever been to an event and you're around a whole bunch of people that you're enamored with, and I must admit I was a bit starstruck with all the people that you guys had there. But yet when it got down to it, at that party, everybody was so humble, so down to earth, and just a regular human being. And I think that's where I'd like people to. What was your take on that?
Well, what I love about our industry is we've all inspired each other along the way. I've taken inspiration from, lots of different people in the industry. And we've all, all of these people, that are legends and, everyone, that have achieved anything, in any career. The great thing about the hairdressing industry is we it never feels like we're competing with each other. It's quite closely knit, and you get the feeling you can phone anybody up, whether they're in the UK and Europe or the US, or, and you could say, hey, I like what you do. Could you help me learn a bit about it? And I think 99 people out of 100 would say, yeah, no problem. And so I do think hairdressing is quite a unique thing in that way, unique industry. And I think it comes down to what we do every day, or the core of what we do behind the chair, trying to make somebody look better and feel better. That's our job. And if we're doing it right, there's a lot of job satisfaction in it for us as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and you hit a great topic right there. And I want to find out a bit. I always ask a bit more about your hair story and where that. So that's kind of where I want to go next. But you said something in there that I think was truly remarkable. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yeah, you said something in there that was truly remarkable, and that was that we all look to one another for inspiration. And I think that you can rise to a certain level, but unless you have some collaboration or something input from somebody else, you can't grow that next step up. And I think that's the part about people listening and watching right now that you might be at the beginning of your career, but is to look to people like Mark and Trevor and Anthony and Christopher Benson and all the people that you admire and take a look at them and just say, what do I aspire? And I don't want to be like that person. I just want to, what can I glean from that person so I can grow and get to that level of success?
Yeah. And I think what we were saying earlier and what we were trying to celebrate in the art piece is the ability to communicate with these people or we all communicate with each other. And it's, it's a very rewarding thing to give, I think, to teach somebody else, as you do. I mean, you're a proper coach, you really share these things that make people's careers more successful. And I think, in that room, there's people that are celebrated for cutting hair, coloring hair, teaching people about life and business, taking photographs, starting product lines, whatever some of these people have done. Yeah. There is an ability to communicate with them and learn from them. And I think that's the most exciting thing about our industry, because here, a lot of people compare hairdressers to chefs, where you had a chef that's become a celebrity chef and they own their own restaurant. But I think the fundamental difference between hairdressers and chefs is, we're communicating all the time with people, whether it's clients or we're teaching the people that work for us. Our job is a lot about people and a lot about communication, whereas I think a chef is a very artistic, creative thing, but it's often done in an environment that isn't so social. The kitchen is a hot place with each person focused on the bit of the food they're creating. And, it's a different people element. So I think that's the great thing about hair. And it's a great thing about those people in the room that you asked about.
Yeah. And I think that, I was going to ask you more about this later, but I think I would be remiss if I went back and then tried to connect this again, because it's such a great topic in there. And for people that don't know or haven't heard of this, of the Legends pieces that you created, and I'll start off with the UK, and then it went to America, and then you did Canada as well. And could tell us where did all that come from? And just if I want people to look up, and I think it's really important, if you go to Mark Woolley's website, Electric, and it's Electric Hair, yes?
Yeah, electric-hair.com.
Electric-hair. And you go on there, you're going to see the art piece that he's done. And I'm going to challenge all of you to do that. But what I've always been wondered, Mark, and the questions I've always wanted to ask you is, how'd they get started? Like, where was the brain, what happened that you went, okay, there's an idea that happened. What was that?
Well, I've always produced art. I've always painted and produced visual art. And I think in some ways that led me to doing hair. I thought, well, hair's a piece of creativity that you can build a business out of. So I've always done, my whole life. I've cut people's hair and I've painted. I've always done those things. Mm. Some of the work I've done over the years has been art installations and collages, and I had this idea that because it did start in the UK, and it was started out of a conversation I was having with Anthony Mascolo, a great friend of mine, the guy taught me a lot worked with him for many years, doing hair things. But we were talking about all of these camps, if you like, in London, where in the 60s and 70s, where everybody came out of one of these camps. So, there was a guy in the 50s called Raymond.
Teasy
they used
Weezy.
to call it Mr. Teasy Weezy. Yeah, so he was like the guy. He was the celebrity hairdresser of the day, and so Vidal came out of his camp, and Vidal obviously started a movement in cutting hair in a different way. And part of his magic was he wanted to teach other people to take this way on. And his big rival in the 60s was a guy called Leonard Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And Leonard was the flamboyant, high profile hairdresser of his day. So he was the guy that cut the Beatles' hair and the Rolling Stones, and he was he had an amazing salon in Mayfair, very, very nice part of London. And everybody went there, and Vidal had created this thing that was, cutting geometric lines and, doing hair in a very, very different way. And that made its way onto, catwalks and on the way onto the front covers of Vogue. And it became a statement of the 60s. And then he very cleverly wanted to teach everybody to cut like that. And I think he really invented hair education.
Yeah,
I think. So you have this generation of people that came out of the Vidal Sassoon camp, and Malcolm and Dennis, the two guys that taught me, they owned a company called Saks, SAKS in the UK. I went to work for them when I was a young guy, 16, and I learned from them. But they'd come out of the Vidal Sassoon camp. There's lots of other people, Joshua Galvin, and lots of big names in London that had come out of the Vidal Sassoon camp. And then out of the Leonard camp had come John Frieda, Nicky Clark, people that had been very, very successful as well, but in a different way. And then out of nowhere came the Mascolo family with Tony and Guy. And then they trained a whole generation of people. So it started with that. And I had a photograph of Leonard Lewis, and it went in the top corner of the British Legends of Hairdressing collage. And anyway, then the COVID lockdowns came. So I was finishing this thing off at home. I'd created a big board. It was about almost 2 meters wide. Yeah. I had the original actually in the other room here, and it 2 meters wide. And I was thinking, oh well, that's the story of hairdressing. And I've done a lot of work with silk screening and putting paint over the top of collages and images. So I created a painting of the Union Jack, an abstract painting. Took a scan of it, created a silk screen, and then with transparent paint, put it over the collage. And it started with a few people saying, "Can I buy that for I'd like to buy that off you." And and I said, "Well, there's only one of them. We can't. It's." So I went to an art publisher who, a big publisher here called Harwood King, but it was the only one I knew. It would be a bit like going into one of the major record labels and saying, "Oh, I've written a song," And so I went in, and this guy said to me, "Well, forgive me," he said, "but I've never heard of you as an artist." He said, "And when I Google you," he said, "there's a lot that comes up about you as a hairstylist, but a very small amount that comes up as an artist. So, we wouldn't publish, something like that." So we got talking, and I had come up with, here we have an industry charity, and then we have another charity that we do a lot of work for, a homeless charity. And I said, well, we're going to do this piece for charity, and I've had a lot of inquiries, people saying they want to buy it, the other hairdressers. So he said, well, okay, we'll look at it. And then in the end, they published it, and it sold out on the day we released it. And he said to me, "I've never seen that before. An unknown artist selling out, with a limited edition." And then we had a big party for it, and and I thought, well, that went well. It was a good event. And obviously I've spent a lot of time in America with Electric, traveling, with working there, and been traveling there doing a lot of session work for years. And I come out there and support the people that carry our products. So I thought, actually, you know what, there's more, America being what it is, I think it's the most exciting place in the world, and what I love about America and American people is nothing's a problem. If somebody wants to go and be successful, they go on the bike and they go and do it, and there's nobody holding anybody back. And everybody's quite happy to see other people do well in America. I like it. I like the positive attitude American people have. And I think I thought, well, actually, there's probably more people in America you can put on this thing. There's so many people doing. I've met so many people just doing different things in America and doing it well. So I thought, well, I'll do an American one, and obviously the Star Spangled Banner, the American flag, I thought is a very visual thing. So I set about doing one of those, and what I didn't want to do in America was miss anyone out that should have been in it, because I'm aware of, I think, I was aware of, I think, probably 90% of the people that are on it, but I wanted to cross-check it. So I'm good friends with Randy and Gerard, who own Hairbrained, and I started talking to them about it, and I said, look, these are all the people I'd like in it. Do you think I've missed anyone? And then Marlene, I say that you mentioned earlier, a great person, and I knew her because she used to work for L'Oreal, and I had met her a few times, and I could see what she was doing, with her artists in the US. And I said to her, look, do you think is there anyone I've missed here? And, could you cross-check everyone? And so there was a few people I kind of bounced it off, because I was with the UK, I didn't feel nervous that I was going to miss anyone, because obviously I've grown up here. But in the States, I don't feel we have. I feel we've got everybody in there, and everybody was very, I think, happy to be in there. And we had two events, one in New York in the middle of Fashion Week that was well attended, and then one in LA that was well attended. And it was just great vibes and great people. And there's people in there that I have followed what they're doing, people like yourself. And like I said, big fan of what you do, but we'd never met in person. So, and same with some of the other people. I was talking to Vernon Francois that night as well. He was actually, he's doing great things. And I didn't know he was English, he's built this whole thing in America. And when he started talking, I was like, why have you got an English accent? So it was great. There were people I've followed their work, but never met them in person. So it was a very nice project. Yeah.
And I had to take my hat off, because not only does it pay tribute to, I've just got, I don't know if anybody knows about here, but I have my setup here so that we use WhatsApp and we can go back and forth. And Lee just wrote in there and he says, he can't hear your Canadian accent. And I went, well, I haven't said you hoser yet. That's probably why. But
it's
I'm still a part of the Commonwealth.
And having spent the time in Canada, I do as well. Yeah. It's really interesting, because different accents, I can now tell a Canadian accent from an American accent, but I think when people come to the UK as tourists, and they're asking for directions in London, people do assume if somebody's from Canada, they're American. And when I'm in the States, if I'm on the East Coast, people never question my accent. They're like, oh, he's English. When I'm on the West Coast, a lot of people ask me if I'm from Australia. If I get into an Uber, they'll say, oh, which part of Australia are you from? And I guess the accent is similar, a bit
Well, unless you know it. I mean, you and I both have very good Australian friends and UK friends, and you can know. I tell you a funny story. I was just in Ace Hardware the other day, and this girl came up and talked to me, and I just said, South African, right? And she went, yeah. He said, you're the only person that hasn't said that I was Australian. And but they're very distinct when you know them. But it's I just first of all just want to say thank you for what you did in there, because I think number one, and I'm going to say this as I can pinpoint people pretty good, and I love your humility in what you do, and how humble you are in this venture that you're on that we call success. But what I also do think is what's so nice in our industry, because you talk about how we get equated to chefs or other people, or sometimes people don't see our industry as high up as we know that it is and has the opportunity to be.
Yeah.
And the thing that I loved about what you're doing is, and I got to admit, I felt validated, to be on that list. Mark, there was when I got that email that said we're on there, and I had to look around and said, do they really know who I am?
Of course we do.
I'm
That's
sure
why
that
you're
so many
on there.
people on there like me, and they just said, well, I'm suffering from imposter syndromes. Are people going to know one day that I'm really not that good at anything? And I don't know if when you run into people, if you get that, but what I do say is I just want to say thank you for what you did on that, because anybody that's in any one of those pictures, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people that are on those pictures, but yet that little piece of you being on that and that whole thing saying what it says, it does give each and every one of those person validity to what they do and everything that they put into their career. So for that, thank you.
Well, no, thank you, Chris, for being on it. And I think similarly, when you write to those people, you got your list and then you write to them, and you're aware of what they've done and what they've achieved. We have got some big achievers in our industry, and everyone was very happy about it when we wrote to them. There wasn't anybody that was, not happy. Everyone. It felt like a nice community of people.
Yeah, no, and they are, and so I'm going to talk just a bit more on the charity that you went to. Could you tell us a little bit about what the charity and how did that start up, and even more so, you contributed all the proceeds from that to that charity, and what was it like when you went to them and gave them, this check, this money, whatever that was?
Yeah, well, we've kind of got an ongoing relationship with a couple of charities, and it's charity's a funny thing, because I think there are a lot of charities now that are like big corporate machines, aren't they? And there's in the UK we'd aligned ourselves with the hair and beauty charity, so part of the money we raised in the UK was for them, and that's interesting. It would be interesting to see somebody set one of those up in America, because it's like a benevolent fund, and it's for hairdressers that have fallen on hard times, and it's ran by a lady, you probably know her, called Jane Lewis Orr.
Oh yeah,
who Jane is the publisher of Hairdressers Journal, and she runs the British Hairdressing Awards and Salon International, and she is the president of this charity. And basically, they collect money in all sorts of different ways. They'll, some salons will do days where they'll donate a day's takings from the salon, and there's other initiatives they run throughout the year and fundraising events. But ultimately, there's a fund there that looks after hairdressers. And, we had a guy quite a few years ago now in one of our salons, and he just dropped down dead with a heart attack when he was 40. No signs of that happening, ill health or anything, but just, and this benevolent fund would very good with his family and very good. There's been other scenarios, where maybe I could think of one where there was a couple that owned a salon and both of them died in an accident. They were looking after, the fund was looking after their kids, and just a very good thing. So that was the first one. It was the British Hair and Beauty Charity, which is like a benevolent fund for hairdressers. And then the other one we work with, and it's an ongoing thing. They're called Centrepoint, and they operate all over the world, but they started here in the UK, and they basically take homeless kids and they put them into apprenticeships and jobs. They've got a criteria. They aim at young, under 30s and people that have maybe only been living on the streets for 12 months or so, and they put them into an apprenticeship. And, we mentioned chefs earlier. Some of the success stories in London, these kids have gone and become an assistant chef or an apprentice chef. And there's a couple of the big name chefs in London that have come through that system. So it resonated with me, that I just thought, what a great thing. Homelessness is a growing thing all over the world. It's a different game to what it was 20 years ago. And certainly in the UK, it exists in every town, and I see it a little bit in the States as well. And it's a global thing. So I think those schemes that get people out of that situation and get them into a job, I could quite, that resonated with some of us at Electric. So we do a couple of things throughout the year for that charity, and some of them have been artworks and but I think art's something I'm always going to do. Always going to, and the collage thing is quite good because it captures a space in time with people that are doing things.
Yeah, and I want to take a little shift here, and I want to go back full circle, and I want to get a little bit more of your hair story and how you got into it. But just before I jump back into that, if people want to get or want to see, and is there any of either the Canadian or the I think you said that the US ones are sold out, not the US, the UK ones, but if anybody wants to either see or purchase either the American ones or the Canadian ones, how would they do that?
Yeah, well, we there are still the US one is not far off being sold out. I think there's only about 6 of them left, out of the whole edition. But there's still, the art website is my surname, so Woolley, which is WOOLLEY.art. So Woolley.art is the site.
Woolley.art.
And there is a whole section on there saying legends, and it's they're on there. But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to this year. Some of the traveling I'll do to the US and attending some of the shows. I know we're going to display the US one at some of the shows, and I think it'll probably, some of the conversations I've had, it'll probably lead to us having an annual event in America.
Yeah.
Just to, and then, someone said to me, hey, well, every year, why don't you have a party for everyone who was in the original one? And, maybe a group of people induct 5 new people every year or something, because the great thing with our industry, it's always moving. Yeah. And then every 5 years, we'll produce another artwork.
Very
the thing could get bigger because, no one has to come off it. It's the people that are on it. They are legends, but there's people
the rising coming legends through.
So it might be one of those things that fills an entire room one day. But I quite like the idea that somebody just threw that in at one of the events and said, "Why don't you do that?" And I thought, well, actually, we could do that.
I love that.
So who knows? But I love the community. I love the so they're there, and we'll maybe every 5 years we'll produce another one.
Love it. So let's take a full spin back, and I want to go back to whatever, that 14, 15, 17, 20-year-old kid that just made this decision to go into hair. So give us a little bit of the hair story. Like how did hair transpire? How did you get into it? And what was the journey like along the way?
Well, I didn't grow up in London. I grew up in the north of England, in a county called Yorkshire. And so the big cities in Yorkshire are Leeds and York. So I grew up quite near to York, and there was the big kind of famous hairdressing company up there was this group called Saks. And they had a salon in London, but they most of the salons were up in the north, and they had a great training school. And I was aware of these guys all the time I was growing up, and and as a kid, I used to go and get my hair cut wherever my mum went or my dad went. One of them would take me along as a kid. And when you get to, I don't know, when you're 12 or 13, you start taking a picture in of what you want to look like, don't you? So I've gone into the barber where my dad's gone, the picture, it could have been anyone, sports person, rock star, whatever. And I'd give them this picture, they'd cut my hair, and it would never look anything like the picture, and the guy would say, well, I'd say, oh, it doesn't look like this, and he'd say to me, well, you're not very good looking, and you've got ginger hair, and, and this, that, and the other. So I remember for a few years, I went away thinking it's impossible to have a haircut that is the same as the picture you take in. Anyway, one day I've gone and got my haircut at this salon, Saks, and I think some guys I knew at school went there, and I remember asking my parents if I could go there, and it was double the price of where they went, and I think for whatever reason they said, okay, you can go. So I went, took my picture in. This guy cut my hair, and he didn't seem much older than me. This guy was maybe in his early 20s, and I might have been 15 or something. And he cut my hair, and it looked like the picture, and it was a combination of the haircut and the products and and I remember thinking, wow, this guy must be a lot better than the other places I've been, really. Anyway, the next few weeks I've gone back into school, and everybody commented on this haircut, school teachers, family, friends, everybody said, oh, wow, Mark, what a great haircut. You look older, you look more sophisticated, all the things you want to hear when you're a young guy. So I remember at the back of my mind thinking a haircut is a powerful thing. And I think I was always a creative person. I was always into things that were artistic, creative. And I just had this appreciation for haircuts. I remember thinking, wow, that guy must be very good at it. Anyway, I then went back, and this guy became my regular hairdresser. And then roll forward 12 months, in the UK, this is where I know our reputation in America is we all like drinking and stuff like that, the British people, but in the UK, the legal drinking age is 18. But most people, start having a few beers over the park with their friends when they're 15 or 16, or or if you
sure
can,
you're not Canadian.
Yeah. you try and sneak into pubs and things. And I remember going on a date with this girl who was a year older than me. And one of the things she asked me was, can you get into a pub without being thrown out, without having your ID, shown? And so I said to her, yes, I can. I'm very good at that, and in reality, I'd never been into a pub without my parents, So anyway, we've gone into this pub, and I was convinced I was going to get thrown out any moment. Anyway, I've gone up, ordered a drink. The guy's given me and this girl a drink. So I'm thinking, right, I'm doing well here. I'm with a girl who's a year older than me. I'm in a pub. I've been served a drink. And I could see this girl was thinking, oh, he's good, this guy, sophisticated, I've looked over the room, and here's this guy that cuts my hair, this new found respect I've got for hairdressers. And here's this guy and a couple of other people that work at the salon. So I said to this girl, I said, oh, there's some friends of mine over there. I said that he's a good friend of mine. He's a hairstylist at Saks. You've heard of Saks. Oh, yes, So I've gone over, started talking to him to show that I knew some people in this pub. And during the course of that conversation, I said to him, I think I'd like to be a hairdresser, and I don't think I'd ever thought about it until that moment. But I remember it was obviously in the subconscious because I was so impressed with how good this guy was at cutting hair. Anyway, he said to me, have you got a pair of black trousers and a white shirt? And I said, yes, I have. It was, what I didn't tell him is it was part of my school uniform. They were my black trousers and my white shirt. But so I've put on this black trousers and the white shirt, and I've gone into the salon the next day. He said, look, come in. You'll be sweeping up and making coffee. He said, but you'll know if you like the vibe, if you like anyway, sure enough, I went in there, and within those weeks, somewhere soon after going in there, I made the decision that's what I wanted to do. And the two guys, Dennis and Malcolm, that were the founders of Saks, they are real unsung heroes in the UK because they were great hairdressers. They both come out of the Sassoon camp. One of them was more down that route, and he was traveling here, there, and everywhere doing hair stuff. The other guy was a very, very good business person. Mm. And they'd built, and he was a good hairdresser as well, but, one focused on one thing and the other focused on the other. And they just built an army of people like me that I think, had they not met them, probably wouldn't have become hairdressers. Because I didn't know anybody that did that. And I think, had this guy not cut my hair, I probably maybe wouldn't have thought about it too much.
Wow.
Anyway, ended up in there. And I just found I loved it. I got straight into really enjoying the hair. And in the UK, you do an apprenticeship, which I really believe in. I think, you at school, you at 16, you can go and do an apprenticeship, and you kind of finish high school. You still have to do maths and English and all that stuff. So you finish high school, but instead of doing some of the other subjects you might not want to do, you're doing hair, and it's not like going to beauty school, and you're around other people that are passionate about doing it, and you're learning off them, and so I was in this amazing environment, and I was up there for 3 or 4 years, and then my then girlfriend, she got a place studying fashion at Central St. Martin's in London. And my ambition was to live and work in London. And two things happened to me that year. I was 18, and my girlfriend got a place at Central St. Martin's, and she was the same year as Stella McCartney. She was 2 years below Alexander McQueen. All the people went there. So that was instrumental in my career. And the other thing is that year I went on holiday to France, and on a skiing holiday with my friends from school. So we're all drinking beer and skiing and all that stuff. And I'm looking at the queue for the ski lift at the line, and here's Anthony Mascolo, at that time probably the most famous hairdresser in the UK. And I'd never met him, but he was like he was the guy. Yep. So I've wandered up to Anthony after having a few drinks and said, "Oh wow, Anthony Mascolo, I'm a young trainee hairdresser, from the north of England." And met him, and he's introduced me to Pat, his wife, and his kids, and we're talking away. And he said to me, "Look, next time you're in London, call me." This is. I'm telling you this. I know this is a long answer, but I'm telling you this story because it links into what we were saying about people helping each other. So he said, "When you're in London, come to my studio, ring me, call me, and I'll show you around." And so I said, "Oh, well, my girlfriend is moving to London. She's studying at Central St. Martin's, and I'm going to move down there as well." But I was sort of lined up to do it the following year. So sure enough, I knocked on his door one day, and he gave me the time, took me up in his studio. He was in the middle of doing a shoot, started introducing me to all of his people he was working with, and I met him. That was pretty instrumental. And also meeting the people that were studying at Central St. Martin's got me into session work because, at that point I'd only worked in a salon behind the chair. And people started saying to me, "Oh, can you come and do the hair on a photo shoot?" I'd never done that before, but I sort of, I'd watched Anthony do it. I went along and started off doing that. And then I started working quite a lot with Anthony and learning from him. And those two things were instrumental. It was meeting him on a ski holiday in France. And, I think I was 18, but we were having a few beers and skiing, and, so that was a chance meeting. The other thing was, meeting Malcolm and Dennis, who had started Saks, and I think I learned a lot from them in the beginning, and that's what got me going.
I bet we have something in common. I have this love-hate relationship. I hate paying for something that I'm not using. I hate working in a small, cramped box, yet I love working in a cool salon that impresses my clients, and I love the culture and synergy of a team while enjoying the freedom of being my own boss. You too? What if all that was available to you at the salon you rent from? Meet Artist on Go, a game-changing way to rent salon space. With Artist on Go, you only pay for the time you're behind the chair. You can choose a salon that fits your vibe, location, and amenities. With Artist on Go, you're a part of a stylist community, not hustling alone. Plus, you get to enjoy perks like clean towels and back bar supplies. Check out Artist on Go, built for stylists serious about their clients and growing their brand without the hassles of managing a space. Here's the kicker. You can save more than 50% on your rent. To find out more, go to bit.ly/artistongocb. That's bit.ly/artistongocb. Yeah. So did that all, excuse me, did that all help with the business side and the artistic side of Electric? Because let's face it, you literally won the Business Thinker Award for Electric, because it's not just the salon. You were thinking, did you think brand straight off the bat and in the business sense, or did that all just happen one after the other?
Not brand. I think I knew I was going to open my own salon and own my own business, and I knew that. And I think one of the decision-making processes was I could see hairdressing as an opportunity to own your own salon, and I thought, well, that would be great. You can. So I've always been as excited about the business side, and sometimes, this is more in the UK, I think, but here people are told, look, you're creative, so you're over there, and you're a business person, so you're over there.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they do that, because they don't do that with other industries. They don't do that with restaurateurs. They don't do that with musicians. They don't do that with fashion designers. They don't do that with graphic designers and people who invent drinks brands. And, they are creative people who enjoy entrepreneurship. Because, I think when you think of the word business, I've never worked in an office. Business it's just people, isn't it? I think it was a conscious decision that Electric was a brand, not a person.
Right.
I've got a good story about that as well, actually, that I'll tell you about. Good story for anyone thinking about how they might brand their salon but it was a conscious decision. It was a brand, because then we could be a group of us. And lots of people are successful calling it their own name, aren't they? Trevor Sorby, Nicky Clark, John Frieda. And that great. That suited them, and they've. But I think for me, where I'd worked for a brand, Saks, and when we were working as the Saks art team, it felt natural to say we and us, and. Because sometimes when I'm talking to magazines and been interviewed, and they say, when we're talking about electric, I would say, well, we did this and we did that. And they say, well, who's we? Have you got a load of business partners? And, so I would say no, but we are a team, we are and I feel comcomfortable it being it's probably just where I started, working for a company. But I'll give you a good story in that when I was leaving Saks, it was, I've been with them a long time. I owned my own businesses within the Saks group. I owned my own salons, but I was employed by them as well. So I used to go round to the salons doing demos and seminars and and stuff like that. And when I was leaving, it was it was news in the industry and people were talking about it. And Trevor Sorby said to me, he phoned me up one day and said, look, I just want to say that I really support what you're doing. He said, he said, I understand why you're doing it. He said, it happened to me at Sassoon. I just thought I needed to do it myself and it was my time. And he said, if you ever need anything, call me, and he said, but I'd really like to meet you and have a drink and talk about what your thoughts are. So I just had all of the branding design finished off for Electric. And I was having a drink with Trevor in a hotel called Claridge's in central London. And in it is Gordon Ramsay's restaurant where he has all the Michelin stars, so it's just called Gordon Ramsay. The restaurant doesn't have a name. And sat in the lobby having a drink, and I out of the envelope I pulled the design work for the Electric brand, which we designed it to look British. It's got a crest, and it's got Electric and the word London underneath it. And I thought he's going to really like this, and I showed it to him, and I saw his face drop, and I said to him, I thought, oh shit, he doesn't like it, So I said, oh, what do you think? Do you like it? No. And he said, well, can I be honest? He said, no. He said, Electric. He said, what sort of name is that? He said, surely you're going to call it Mark Woolley? And I said, well, no, I was going to call it Electric. And he went, oh no. He said, I don't like that at all. He said, who'd want electric hair? Like static. He said. So I remember. I mean, good on Trevor because he's so honest, and so I put this thing back in the envelope and I'm walking home in the rain probably, and thinking, oh, maybe I've got this very wrong. And maybe the next day I was working with Anthony and I was telling him the story and I showed it to him and he said, oh, no, this is right. He said, look, what Trevor's doing is right for him. I think Anthony always felt like he was a team person because Tony and Guy were his two brothers, and he was one of four brothers in the business. And so he was always part of a team, and I was at Saks, it felt more natural. Anyway, so that story, I've told it a lot over the years. And a couple of years ago, I was away on a L'Oreal trip somewhere, and Trevor and his wife were there. And I was telling the story at the table, and he was sat next door but one to me. And so at the time he was saying, I never said I didn't like it. So his version of the story was the same as mine, apart from he said, I didn't say I didn't like it. I said, you did, so we're kind of, it's like that story of when the Beatles, they met their hero in Elvis. They only ever met him once. He was their hero. They only ever met him once. And all four of them had a different version of where they were and whether they were stood up or sat down and what Elvis said and all of that stuff. So anyway, I thought I'll throw that story in because lots of people now are starting brands and, anyone opening their salon or starting anything where they're going to, is the brand them? Is it their name or is it a thing? And I don't think there's any right or wrongs.
No, I agree with you. I think that whatever you do, but here's always the thing that I say, and these are things that I didn't know. I didn't know way back when. I do now because I'm involved with franchise business and business as a whole and so on. But the one thing that I do know is it's easier to sell a business, because everybody should always think about how am I getting in and how am I getting out? So you got to plan your end game as well as you're getting into it. And they say, I have business partners that say, as soon as you start a business, you got to think about, as soon as you're starting it, how can you sell it later on down the road and scale it, et cetera. And it's easier to sell something that doesn't have the initial, like if Apple can sell Apple really easily, but if it would have been called Steve Jobs, it would be harder to sell. So that's the kind of the tack that I always think on, that some of my business coaches have told me. So but I wanted, we've talked about your brand, and I want to go jump a little bit more into, because it's more than just a salon now, and you've got electric space, and you've got electric studio, and you have electric product line, etc. How did those all start off? And obviously you started with the salon.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about the electric space, etc.
One thing led to another, and I think so. When I left Saks, I already had 5 salons that were owned by me, but they were called Saks, so they were a franchise, So I was then employed separately by them as well, to represent the brand. And we're still great friends now. Sadly, one of them, Malcolm, died a few years ago, but Dennis, the other one, is alive, and we're all good friends, But it was when it came to the time to start Electric, I already owned my salon. So 2 of them, I owned the buildings that the salons were in. I'd managed to buy the building, and then 3 of them I didn't. So the franchise agreement is you've got to if you've got a lease, you've got to sell the lease back to them on your way out. So 3 of my salons I had to sell, and it left me with 2 salons, one in Brighton, one in Reading. And so I rebranded them both at the same time. But I'm mainly based in London. I live half the time in London, half the time down here at Falmer Court, and I've always worked in London. My clientele is there. But Brighton and Reading, which were the 2, Reading's a city that's just west of London, next to Heathrow Airport, and Brighton is an hour outside London on the south coast. So it took me about a year to try and find a site in London. So when I launched Electric, it was 3 salons, and I already owned my own studio, and I already had the word electric in my mind. So 2 years earlier, before I rebranded the salons, I called the studio the Electric Studio, and I had my own creative team. I was doing, I've always done a lot of session work throughout my career as well. So I had my own art team that I based there in the studio. And where the word electric came from, this is what I was saying to Trevor. I always felt that the difference with my Saks salons that I owned, the difference between them and the other Saks salons was we had this great atmosphere in them, where, not that the others didn't, but we worked hard at that. We wanted people to have a good time when we're in there. All of my salons have got a licensed bar in them. There's a general drinking theme here, isn't there? But yeah, they've all got a licensed bar in them. Music's very important to us, good music, and there's a whole curation process to that. But good hair. So when I started Electric, I thought, right, when a client comes in, they're going to meet somebody really accomplished. They're going to meet somebody who yesterday they were doing a Vogue cover, or they were doing a runway show, or they were doing something great. But today they've got you in the chair, and they're going to make you look and feel great. And I thought, well, if all that's happening, if the music's great, the coffee's great, you can have a glass of wine, that, the person you meet behind the desk's amazing, and, all these people are ambitious and positive, then the atmosphere in the salon will be electric. And that's where the word, so it was never, I was never designing a brand. I never really thought at the time, that will do a product line. But it was, at the time, I thought I will open a great salon in London called Electric. And then as it happened, I branded 2 existing ones first, and then a year later opened in Marylebone High Street in central London. So there were these 3 salons. I understood operating more than one salon through years of being at Saks. Then the product thing, I've had a very close relationship with L'Oreal for all of my career. You know, started Saks, had a big contract with L'Oreal. So when I left, they took me on as an artist. They signed me as an artist and an ambassador. You know, did a lot of work with Kerastase for a lot of years. And I met some of the chemists. I got one of the chemists I met in France was an English guy, and he was from a similar place to me in the north of England. So we, you know, got talking to him in Paris, and I was saying to him, look, the thing with hair products and using them on shoots, a lot of them are so heavy. And he had a piece of technology that they use in skincare to evaporate residue. You know, when you rub like a face cream on, yep, the skin will absorb 50% of it, and then the other 50% evaporates. So if your skin isn't left feeling oily, you think, oh, that's a good quality product, my skin's absorbed it all. But in reality, some of it's evaporated. So he was telling me how to do that with skincare. And I said, well, someone should do that with hair care, because, you know, half the time you're promoting a product and you're being told to use it. But half the time it's lessening the time you've got to work on it in front of the camera, because it's weighing it down. So he helped me design a smoothing cream. And again, still wasn't thinking about doing a product line. He helped me design a smoothing cream, became very good friends with him. The smoothing cream was a big success. We only sold it in our salon, but we used to have other hairdressers coming to buy it, you know, from the salon. And I seeded it with a load of other session people. And this is 20 years ago. And then I told him that I liked the Bumble and Bumble prep spray. It was one of the things I used to use a lot. And I said, but the only thing is, I said, that doesn't evaporate, but it's liquid. I said, imagine if you could make the liquid evaporate. He said, oh, no problem, you know, same idea. So we made a prep spray where all the residue evaporated. So it was very good for people with fine hair, you know, and it worked as a conditioner as well. So those people who don't want conditioner on the hair because they think it's going to make it flat, we made a conditioner that. So we had these 2 quite unique products. And, you know, this ingredient we use, we list it on our bottle as one ingredient, but it's actually 2 ingredients. And to my knowledge, it still isn't used in hair care anywhere. And the whole vibe with Electric is we've designed a range of styling products for session hairdressers that evaporate on the hair. The products, you know, that is the biggest part of our business. You know, we sell it here and in Europe and North America as well. And the unique thing is we manufacture it ourselves. We've got a farm here, you know, where we source all of the ingredients ourselves. We even grow some of the ingredients ourselves. And you know, we've been making products properly, I would say, for about 16 years, you know, and I've taken inspiration from, I love what Michael Gordon did with Bumble. I love what Horst did with Aveda. I never met him. He's one of the guys I really wish I could have met him before he died. But I think the product visionaries to me, Michael Gordon, Horst, Jerry Redding, the Moscolo family, you know, there's been people that have created things that, you know, I think the Sebastian thing was amazing, you know, in its time. And so I've always loved products. So that was my natural progression, I think. And then the other things, I mean, Electric Space, I guess, was born out of everything we did, because we already owned a studio separately and we had salons, and we just put all that under one roof and made it a big creative space. Again, it's got a bar. So, you know, I'd love for you to come over, Chris, because
I'd love it. And I know as we're talking about drinking so much, I know we can be friends. So
100%. It's a shame we're a few thousand miles away and I've only got a bottle of water here.
Well, I've got my tea here because it's the morning, but getting to the mid-afternoon. But Yep, just with your water and my tea. Cheers, and here's to us getting together. Cheers. That'll be fun.
Well, I love that. Well, I was doing a Zoom meeting one day with a distributor in the US, and obviously everyone I meet, the reputation of the English and the Irish is, hey, you guys like drinking. And one day we're having a Zoom meeting like this, and I had a bottle of water, but it was in a glass bottle. There's a brand of water here called Blue, the BLU, and they're in glass bottles. So I picked up that one day in a meeting, had a drink, and the guy leaned into the camera. He said, "Mark, is that vodka?" He went, "Because it's 11 o'clock in the morning." I was like, "No, it's not vodka. It's just in a glass bottle, you know."
But now you know that you could say that with anything. I should have just said yes. I can have this cup here, and as long as I'm doing this, cupping the glass, and then I can go, I could have as much red wine or beer in here as you'd still think I was drinking tea. So everybody knows it.
Well, I know it's obviously red wine now. Now you said that. But when you see musicians playing live, they often come on stage with a mug, like a mug of tea. And I always thought, I wonder if that's like booze hidden in there. But so I worked with Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, and so he and I was on his tour this year. He walks on with a mug like this, and I said to him, "What's in there?" And he said, "Oh, it's lemon and honey. It's a kind of vocal cord thing, like a solution for not ruining your vocal cords when you're singing." There's a thing we've learned today.
But an old he won't let you smell what's in it, though.
Probably not.
I'll tell you a funny story. I'm not sure if you remember Brian Smith, Brian and Sandra. They were on your Legends as well.
I know Brian and Sandra really well.
Yeah, and he was one of my best mates, and he always tells, because he and Nazareth were best buds, and he always tells the story about, I'll leave the one out who it happened to, but he's playing away. And so if you're listening now, imagine he's playing away on his guitar, and he's poking at his ear to the roadie and saying, and he's telling him, my guitar doesn't work. So the roadie's running around, and he's checking out equipment and doing everything, and nothing is working. So finally he looks back at him, and he goes up to him, and imagine when he's strumming away. And finally, the roadie took his hand and pushed it on the strings of the guitar. And he wasn't even hitting, he was so drunk, he wasn't even hitting the strings of the guitar. And I guess Pete, at the end of it, he went out and he went walking off, and he just boffed him one right in the chops when he got off the stage. Yeah. But it's those funny stories. It's that kind of stuff that makes road the fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Was there any wild stories, like when you were teaching or whatever? Like, did you do pranks or try to catch one another at stuff? Or I'm just finding that right now it's not like the same as when we were on the road and I'm just going to say, I'll leave it at the 80s, in the 80s and 90s, when you was more full reign, that you could put jokes on one another and so on. But
the world's all got a bit serious, hasn't it, since then?
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, some of the best times I've had, some of the best laughs I've had with it, and we've got Electric. A lot of people have been there for a long time. When, so we had these salons, and we brought out these products, and the good thing with our products, our main customers are other hairdressers. It's always been a professional line. Mm-hmm. So when we started doing the exhibitions in Europe, like Cosmoprof in Bologna and stuff like that, I bought an old VW camper van, and I had it restored and branded Electric, and then I had and we used to hire another like RV type thing, and we would drive from London down to northern Italy, so you kind of do the length of France, and you go through the Mont Blanc tunnel, and we'd make about 10 days of this trip. And we go and it was about, I think there was probably 8 of us traveling, and all like-minded people, all liked having a good time. And so when we got there at Cosmoprof, they would book us as an artistic team to do a show. And then we would have a booth, so we'd be there working on the booth, but we'd be out every night. We'd have a couple of days skiing on the way down there. It would be carnage, it would be like a band on tour. And I mean, so we used to go there and everyone remembered us. We had this branded van and, it was how we put ourselves on the map, and we'd drive the van in and it was part of our booth. And we'd build this thing, and then on that night we'd be doing a show, and I don't know, the Sassoon art team would arrive in a chauffeur-driven car, and they'd just walk onto stage. We'd be there building our stand to sell the products the next day, get changed out of our overalls into our stage gear, go and do a show with all the models and everything. And then we'd be straight in the pub, and there was this Irish bar in Bologna where everybody, from all the other brands were there, and it was really good times. One year we pulled up, and it's probably the biggest show in the world. All these big halls full of booths, and we saw an electrical generator box with a hole for a hookup, like an RV hookup.
Yep.
So one of the guys jumped out and said, I'm going to plug into that, and then at least we'll have some power whilst we camp in this RV overnight. So he pulled out the jack that was there, and about 4 of these halls, all the lights went off. All of that, and it didn't stop him plugging our RV thing in, and having power for the night. So I mean, they were some of the best times on the road doing that. And we'd go on stage like we'd arrived in a chauffeur-driven car, but actually it was 8 lads in an RV. They built the booth, and and so they were brilliant times. And I think they're your bond building with your team, and it's where you're getting the company off the ground, and you're doing what you love, and you're having a good time doing it.
And that is literally what I'd say the quintessential part of your history. Is all those good times you had when nobody's rolling in money. It's just, you had to do what you had to do, and you made it work, and you had good laughs and good times. I even remember when we started our business, I was still working for somebody at the time, and my wife Rita and we had no money whatsoever. And I just remember some of the friends we had to make our own booze. We won't go into a lot of that, but that was some of the best times in our life, and I still cherish those memories. It's not always about money.
I could imagine, you obviously speak to a lot of people, and you're learning a lot about lots of different people. But a lot of the people I've spoke to over the years that have built businesses, the good times have been when it's been tight, and
Yep.
I mean they were times for us where we certainly weren't making a lot of money, but any money we did have, we were investing it in trying to get the thing off the ground. And it's funny because before the COVID thing came along, I was thinking, oh, this is great. Everything felt like it was doing quite well, and it was upward only. And then COVID really ripped the heart out of it for us. I mean, in the UK, the salons in total were closed for 8.5 months.
Yeah.
And it really, it's taken all this time to recover. And, it did go a bit like this, and you've just got to, I think find it in yourself again. And for me, some of it was returning back to those times and keeping things simple again. But having enjoy it, as long as you keep enjoying it, I think that doesn't seem stressful, or, as long as you enjoy what you do.
Yeah. Do the good times outweigh the bad? And that's always, I think, the surefire way of measuring. So, Mr. Woolley, and that's the last time in my life I'm ever going to call you that. It'll be Mark from here on in. But this has been such a joy. But we're at that rapid fire part of our session. So, I'm going to throw out a series of questions. First things that come to your brain.
Yeah, I'm ready.
What turns you on in the creative process?
Sharing it, the most important part of the creative process.
Yeah. And what stifles creativity for you?
Being bogged down with other things.
What's the thing that you love most in life?
Music.
The thing you dislike in life the most?
Not having any money. We've all
There
been
you
there
go.
a few
I'm with you.
times.
Yeah, I always said I've had lots and I've had none. I like
Yeah.
having lots better.
Yeah, yeah.
My line is, I always say I'd sooner be crying in my Porsche than laughing on a bicycle. A person, and I think I know this one already. I'm going to ask one more first. The thing that you love most about our industry?
The people, and the ability to learn off each other. That might
And
be
what do you
two things.
dislike the most about our industry?
There isn't anything I really dislike. You know, I know that sounds cliche, but I can't think of anything where I think, yeah, I can't. I honestly can't think of anything I dislike. That isn't
awesome.
That isn't a diplomatic answer either, because there are things. I guess every day where you think, "Oh, I wish this wasn't happening, and I wish that wasn't happening." But that's in any walk of life, isn't it? But our industry as a thing, I think, is a great thing.
Yeah. Person that you admire the most?
There are lots of them. There are lots of them. And there's a difference between admiring people you've never met, like Muhammad Ali or John Lennon, and the people that you have met. And, someone like Anthony, I hold up there as like one of the
me too.
all-rounders, that, and some of that is because of the impact he's had with the things I've learned from him.
Yeah. Your most prized possession?
Possession? This is where you've got to remind yourself, people aren't possessions.
That's right.
But I it's probably where I am now, Falmer Court. I think I was meant to be. I mean, this is a very old place. I was meant to be here at some point, and my family were meant to grow up here. Which they have, and it's our home.
Love it. Next time we have you on here, I want to talk a little more about that. The person that you wish you could meet?
Muhammad Ali or John Lennon. Bit tricky now, though.
Yeah, something people don't know about you.
Well, I used to say, I paint, but now people do know that. What don't they know about me? I play the guitar.
Oh. Okay, if you were saying, snap of the fingers, you got a month off, where would you go? What would you do?
I would go to Africa, because it's a place I've been to certain countries in Africa, but I haven't seen a lot. It's the one continent I haven't seen a lot of. I'd go and see some places I hadn't seen.
Thing that terrifies you?
Not being able to do the things I love doing.
That's labid. I love it. Favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Favorite comfort food?
I've got to tell you, I know this is quick fire, but right, fuck is not only international, it's understood in every language. But you can apply it to almost anything. You think you can apply it to any situation, any feeling, and it is a great word. But the one that is also one of my favorites, because you don't really have it in America, People don't use the word wanker, do they, in America?
Most people know what it is here, though.
Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
What's your favorite comfort food?
Comfort food on a hangover day has to be pizza, doesn't it? Good pizza.
Oh, yeah. Right. Something in the industry that you haven't done, but you want to.
God. Oh, wow. That is a tough one. Set up a chair on a remote beach and cut hair for a month. I was saying to someone the other day, the opposite of what you were saying there, that I said, as far as the hair industry goes, we all end up having a go at most things. We all have a go at education. We all have a go at owning a salon. There are lots of things to have a go at. But if I'm totally honest, I still really enjoy cutting a client's hair.
Yeah.
A person where you cut their hair, talk to them for an hour, they go off feeling good, and so do you. I still really enjoy that.
Yeah.
So that's what
like you said earlier. You said a haircut is a powerful thing.
It really is.
Yeah. If you had one do-over, what would that be? You could do over anything again. What would you want it to be?
Oh, to go and do it again?
Yeah.
I haven't heard the term do-over.
Yeah.
If I could go and do it again, I'd go and do the first salon again, the first ever salon.
Love it.
With all those people in it.
Tomorrow, you couldn't do hair. What would you do?
Definitely art, paint.
Yeah. I don't think I was too far off on that one. So I just want to say, first of all, before I've got one more question for you, is that if I think for us it's really important. I love doing our podcasts here, and if everybody is listening and watching, if you could just make a comment on this so we know how you like things, and if you want to give us a rating, that would be awesome. That would help us to get into more people's lives and be able to bring people like Mark to you so you can listen and watch them as well. But one last question before we sign off in here is, if you had one wish, Mark, for our industry, what would that be?
That the community, camaraderie, giving each other inspiration, that continues forever, never changes.
I love it. And Mark, I know it's UK time, probably time to go down to the pub. But
that's exactly right.
I would say this. I know you gave up your time and energy to be with us here. And I just want to say thank you again for everything you do for our industry. And I always say, unselfishly that you've done. And I just want you to thank you again for taking that time to be on here and being on our podcast. And I know that one day we will get together. We will have that pint together and dinner and share more good stories. So I just want to thank you so much for being here.
Well, Chris, thank you. I wanted to say thank you to you because it's amazing what you do. You've obviously, you've mentored and taught a whole generation of people out there. And I think the fact you're doing this and, sharing yours and other people, your guests' experiences as well. I'm very honored that you've invited me on here, and thank you. And I will look forward to seeing you again soon. I'll message you when I'm coming to the US,
and
which will be 5
always got a place to stay if you're in Phoenix area.
Thank you. Well, the same to you as well. Thank you very much.
Mark, thank you again, and it was a pleasure and an honor, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. We'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Take care.
Headcases is produced by Cut Action Media with Marjorie Phillips doing the planning parts, Lee Baran on the video bits, and Adrian Taverner mixing the audio jazz.